I'm going to make my way up into Luckham, along to the landslip, up Devil's Chimney, then on to Ventnor Downs, where I'm meeting a friend that's come down from London. He's bike packing. We're going to camp on top of the Downs. It's a very dreek day, and as the Scots would call it. It's very grey and muggy and horrible, and a little bit damp. But you know, I'm out of the house, so I'm happy. So let's get going. Well, I think I am cursed because it's just started to rain. Every time I come out, I miss the good weather, and I wanted to show you the beauty of this area. So yeah, it's not very good, but I'll still show you the views, might as well. I'm going to walk through the landslip, and Devil's Chimney you'll find interesting. It's a cleft in the rock that steps in it, in a very fascinating little area. But I might have to shelter from the rain because, believe it or not, I've not bought a rain jacket. Naughty boy. It's normally a fantastic view, this, and I've shot this elder, I think it's an elder tree here. I think they call it an elder bush actually, I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, I've shot this many times in much better circumstances. I'll put it into the video. Again, I apologise for the weather. That's Sandown Bay, that's Culver Cliff there. The White Cliff, that's a chalk cliff. Now, the Isle of Wight's shaped like a diamond, like that, and the chalk spine runs through the middle. One end is the Needles, the other end is Culver Cliff. That's Sandown Pier there. You can't really see Shankton very well, and there's some cattle over there. I've got to be careful because they're getting a little bit annoyed with me. I can see them starting to walk my way. Cattle don't like it when you stop still in their space and just don't do anything. They often get very curious, then aggressive. So I've got to be careful, but I'll move on. So anyway, let's go into the landslip. And the landslip literally means, I've mentioned it in previous videos, that the land has slipped. And it's on the slip all the time on the Isle of Wight. I keep mentioning this in previous videos, I know as well, but it's important to understand how the Isle of Wight sits geologically, because it's made of sedimentary rock. There's hardly, well, there is no igneous rock. There's nothing like granite or anything like that. There's hard green sandstone, and that's it. And that's not that hard either. So yeah, it's a geologically diverse place that's got a lot of problems, basically. Anyway, let's go into the landslip and I'll show you more when I get in there. This chap in this property coming up does not like cyclists. Yes, it's a footpath, but he's done everything in his power to stop the cyclists getting through. And he's living in a beautiful spot like this. He's got some lovely plants in his garden, and I'll show you a plant that's very common on the Isle of Wight, especially on the south coast. It's called Echium, E-C-H-I-U-M. You'll see them on the Canary Islands, but you'll also see them on the Isle of Wight and in Cornwall as well, and Devon. But they're a particular plant that's grown in gardens on the Isle of Wight. And when I get closer, I'll show them to you. So this is the Echium here. Look at the size of it. It's about 9 foot tall. And the bees are all over it. They love them. It's starting to rain again. 2 more there. They can actually grow large. I used to grow them myself, but what a beautiful plant. And it thrives here because we very rarely get frost in this part of the Isle of Wight. And it faces south and it's always quite warm. What a lovely little cottage. It looks a bit unlived in. The trouble with thatch is it always needs repairing. I think it lasts 15 years. We're now entering the landslip, and light very rarely penetrates in here, so it's always cool. The whole area is full of ferns and ivy. It's quite spooky sometimes, especially at night when you walk through here. But it's one of the most fascinating places on the Isle of Wight as far as I'm concerned. So here's the wishing seat. I'll show you a little bit more in a minute. And I'll actually sit on it and make a wish. I'm taking the easy way up, My rucksack is driving me up the wall because it's very squeaky. Oh, Terex, you need to sort it out. So you get up here, make your wish, close your eyes, make your wish. I've been doing this since I was about 5. I'm 63 years of age now, so I've been doing it a long time. Let's go farther into the landslip and I'll show you Devil's Chimney, a cleft in the rock. Well, I'm going to make my way up Devil's Chimney. I'm coming off the coastal path because I think you want to see it. It's a fascinating little area. Well, this is the start of the cleft in the rocks called Devil's Chimney. Just to show me going in, you can't turn sideways. It's very narrow. In fact, it's a bit of a squeeze, even like this. So I'm coming back out. I'm going to walk up with my camera. So if you're a little bit overweight, being a lot overweight really, you won't get through. Not for the claustrophobic. You cannot turn sideways. Once you're in here, you have to walk back out. And with my sack on, I'm still struggling to get through. So if you're very obese, you wouldn't get through. Now that's looking up. This will be very noisy. I'm on ISO 6400. Any photographer or videographer will know what I'm talking about, but that's the cleft there, coming back out. So you have to be reasonably slim to get through it. So I'm gonna make my way up here and then drop down into Bonchurch. I just took a detour to show you this cleft. The Victorians put the steps in and it's lasted. It's terrible when people wait for you. You're at the top of a set of steps and you feel obliged to get a crack on or get a move on. I can hardly catch my breath. I'm going to make my way to the road for a bit, then I'm going to drop down to Bonchurch Church. I think it's called St Boniface Church, Old St Boniface. Lovely little church. I'll show it to you in a minute. So I'm coming into the village of Bonchurch now. I'm going to drop down to the church itself, Old St Boniface Church. This village is full of plaques to artists and writers, etc. that lived here. Now I don't know who John Leach is, but it's illustrated a special shower bath contraption erected on the beach by his friend Charles Dickens. And Charles Dickens wrote a lot of David Copperfield down here as well. There's other writers and artists, and I'll show you as I go through the village, that lived in these houses, often as second homes, but they fell in love with Ventnor, in particular Bonchurch. And if you come here, you'll see why. It's got a special feel to it. You can't articulate very easily. The book, The Blue Lagoon, was written by Henry de Vere Stappool, who was Irish. Now, I mentioned the old church earlier on. I'm going to make my way into the newer church, which was built by the Victorians, because there's a famous poet buried here as well. More echiums. You've got to be careful not to touch them because they'll bring you out in a rash. There's a new one growing there. That's what they look like when they start to grow up, so to speak. Originally, this whole area was a quarry, and that's what has given this village of Bonchurch its look, basically, because the village has been built within the quarry. There's a grave down there to Algernon Charles Swinburne. That might not mean a lot to some people, but he was a famous Victorian poet and lived at a huge house there called Winterbourne. He died quite young. He was very frail, apparently. But anyway, he's quite a famous poet. But not for me, because I don't particularly like his poetry, but I've heard of him, obviously, because of the Isle of Wight connection. He died on the island, I think, of tuberculosis. Well, here's the plot of the Swinburne family, and this is Algernon Charles Swinburne. That's the name, isn't it? And this is the newer church. I think it was made to look old, but built with local stone. I said Swinburne lived at Winterbourne. I was wrong, very sorry. He actually lived here, and that's the plaque. It's East Dean he lived at. So yeah, I made a mistake there. Can any building look more French and actually be in England? It's always fascinated me. Well, this is Winterbourne House. Charles Dickens wrote, well, a good part of David Copperfield here in 1849. Miles Burkitt Foster, a watercolour artist, painted some lovely pictures of Bonchurch Shore. William Adams, Christian scholar, Less said about people like him, the better. But anyway, he wrote the sacred allegories and lived here from 1843 until his death in 1848. Now I'm making my way down to the old St. Boniface Church, which is much smaller. It was rebuilt in 1070. That gives you a rough idea how old this church is. The graveyard is fantastic. If you're a bit of a goth, you'd love this graveyard. What a beaut of a church. Look at these gravestones. Apparently some of them are French sailors that drowned off here and shipwrecked. But it's a fantastic graveyard. And if you're into that sort of gothic feel, this is the graveyard for you. The church itself is absolutely beautiful inside, but Spartan, but absolutely beautiful. Look at these roses around the door. So let's go inside and see if it's still open. It might be locked, and it looks like it is, as a matter of fact. So yeah, it's been locked. Great shame, I got here late. It's nearly 5:30. I think they shut it at 5. Might as well clean my boots off. Got a lot of salt water on them. Very slippery though. I think that'll do. Yeah. I'm just making my way down to the shore of Bonchurch here. So this is Bonchurch Shore. Now I'm going to make my way along the seawall, which is pretty boring towards Ventnor, but I will open up again in a minute, or video again in a minute, and just show you a bit of the seawall, and then I'll get into Ventnor, show you a little bit, and then I'll go out to the shop, and I'm going to make my way to the top of the downs, which would be a climb of about 800 feet from sea level. So it's not exactly Mount Everest, but it's a hell of a pull-up, about a 1 in 4 the whole way. So let's get going. I actually like this weather. I don't like perspiring, because other people sweat, I perspire. I don't like sweating because it takes away from the enjoyment. I love this cool breeze. I've got nothing against it. It's just nice to see a bit of sun, but I don't care what the weather is. I'm out. And if it's not absolutely chucking it down, I'm fine. And I don't mind the wind either, except when I put up my tent. Well, we'll see about that in a minute, because it is quite windy. My battery's about to die. The woes of 4K. It doesn't take long to drain a battery. I've probably got about 15 minutes of filming in and the battery's gone flat. I'm on a Sony a6400, so I'll change it in a minute and then get back online as soon as I've done that, and I'll show you the seawall. Not very interesting. When I get to Ventnor, I'll show you more of the town itself. Well, that's the seawall. It's pretty boring. I'm going to walk right through to Ventnor. That's the cascade at Ventnor. It was designed by Edgar J. Harvey. Quite a beautiful little gardens. I'll show you more in a minute. I'll show you a bit more of the esplanade as well. Well, this is the esplanade. So zoom in a little bit. As you can see, Ventnor is terraced. This was erected by the Bonchurch Temperance Society, and you can't get water out of it even. That's the other half of the cascade. Beautiful, isn't it? Lovely gardens, and the echiums are everywhere. I know it doesn't look steep, but believe me, it is. Most of the hills in Ventnor are like this. So I'm going to work my way up through the town where you see that greenery. When we go to the top of that down there. Onwards and upwards. So it's quite steep. That mountain biker, that's my friend Ben. I used to ride with him. He's a lot fitter than me. That's looking back down on Ventnor towards the west of the Isle of Wight. Well, that's sea view back into Ventnor. I'm shaking a bit, sorry. That was a hard pull up. Still got a bit of a pull up, but I've broken the back of it now. I don't think it's going to rain tonight, but you never know. I haven't got a rain jacket with me. What a fool. But as soon as I get pitched up, I should be all right. There's not much of a wind now either, so it's looking quite good. We're just coming up to Ventnor radar station. Now, it's really old Ventnor radar station, or Ventnor old radar station, whatever. Very important during the Second World War. There's nothing that remains of it except the bunkers. And I got into the bunkers the other month and now they've closed them off. I was doing a bit of urban exploration. Of course, that's illegal, but I got some great shots from it. But I can remember the old rotor radars being up there, and I got into the rotor bunkers actually, and the rotor is spelled R-O-T-O-R, and there were radars that were developed after the Second World War. And yeah, like a lot of things initiated by the government, they turned out to be a failure. That's the top half of Bonchurch down there. This is actually the highest point on the Isle of Wight, by the way, 740 feet, something like that. I can't remember, 729. I'm slightly below it, of course, but roughly I'm at the highest point on the Isle of Wight. St Boniface Down. That's Ventnor down there. Photographed it many times from up here at night time. So I'm now waiting for my friend, so I better ring him, I suppose. I'm zoomed in a hell of a lot here. They're the Needles, well, not the Needles, they're the cliffs that lead up to the Needles. That's Freshwater Bay. So I'm zoomed in quite a bit. So from here you can see literally both ends of the island, east and west. Well, that's Sandown Bay again. I might zoom in a bit more for you, but that's what I showed you when we first started off. I'm almost coming back on myself, as a matter of fact. I've changed cameras now on my little Sony RX02M. Got my issues with it, but that's the view towards Shanklin, and of course the sun is setting over there. So there's 4 of us because 2 friends have come up from Shanklin to visit us. Like my friend from London who's come down from Kennington. He's in a tarp, I'm in my tent. I'm quite happy now. I'm in a good place. I've stopped, I've pitched up, and the sun's setting. I'm hearing green woodpeckers. I'm looking across a beautiful bay. It hasn't been that sunny today, and suddenly, as I said, the sun is here. My 2 friends have come up from Shanklin. Got a bit of music going on. That's Shanklin over there. My friend Peter, he's got some kind of wood stove going on there. He doesn't mind being looked at. Take a look at that. He's bike packed up here. And look at that fire. I've got a little speaker, Bluetooth speaker going there, so yeah. But look at Shanklin in all its glory and Sandown Bay there. So yeah, we're having a good time. So I'll probably speak to you later when I'm inside my tent.
Well, I hope you can hear it. It's raining heavily. Didn't expect that. And I missed the sunrise this morning, and that was, well, I caught the last end of it. It was actually fantastic. And suddenly, about 20 minutes later, it started raining. It's now about, I'm guessing, about 7 o'clock. I've been awake for a long time, and I hate being stuck in the tent because I've got a bad back. But it's that Hobson's choice whether I get out and walk around in the rain for a bit. And as I said yesterday, I forgot my rain jacket, so I'm a bit of a knob really, but there you go, I've learnt a lesson there. Well, it's still raining. Let me show you outside. Pretty grim, but it will go away. I've got an app on my phone, a rain radar app. I recommend you get it because at least you can see what's going to take place. And we're on the very edge of it. It wasn't meant to touch us, but it is going northwards and eastwards over to sort of Holland. So we should be all right in about half an hour to an hour. But anyway, I hate being confined inside a tent. And I don't know really quite what to do because I haven't got a rain jacket, but that's life. That's my fault. Never mind.
Well, here we are. So I've set up. And that's Shanklin. It stopped raining now, obviously. Not a bad night last night. I slept really well, I have to be honest. I woke up once or twice, but hardly at all. Didn't wake up till just after sunrise, missed it for the time lapse, went back to bed again. The rain come in and you think, well, what can I do? There's no phone signal up here where I was anyway, in that little dip there. So you just go off and doze off again, and it's lovely. It's having a duvet day, camping basically. But anyway, it's now 10:41. I'm not packing away because I'm not in a rush and I want stuff to dry out. Right, we're coming up to the top of Shanklin Down now. That's the trig point. I'll show you more when we get there. My friend's walking his bike kindly with me, so riding it. And this is probably one of the highest points on the island as well. And I know it's misty today, but you can see the cliffs by the Needles. You won't see it on this camera, I realise that. And that's my friend riding off with his bike. So yeah, this is the trig point, and this is 729 feet, so it is one of the highest points on the island, and that is Sandown Bay. Job done, finished. There's my Fiat Panda 4x4. Great little car, by the way. I'm not doing a product placement now, I'm just telling you it's a nice car. Overall, been great. Just said goodbye to my friend. He's got some work in London this weekend that came up early as a contractor. So he's gone back to London, and I'm going to go back home. I've got the house to myself. So yeah, but I've got to drive my tent out, etc., etc. All the other things that you should do straight away that sometimes when you're lazy you don't do, but I make sure I definitely do them. So my tent goes on the line, my liner gets washed, my silk liner, my bag got slightly wet. I was slightly concerned I might have a leak in my tent, but anyway, my bag's slightly wet, it's down, that will go into the airing cupboard, etc., etc. I don't want to bore you, but I've had a good trip, and hopefully next week you'll get another video from me. I could even be on the mainland by then. That's the radio. Don't forget your rain jacket, and don't forget to put your guy ropes out because it can get windy. End of story. See you next week.